Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Stigma-Free Society Wellness Chats with Nisha. It is a great day. Happy to have you here. I'm going to be chatting with a lovely person today from Inclusion BC. And just before we get started, I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a director producer, registered clinical counselor. I've worked with the Ministry of Children and Family Development, and I am co-founder of Human Biography, where we get to interview some of the most iconic people in the world, like Katy Perry or Susan Sarandon, Meryl Streep, Dalai Lama, and also co-founder of Women of Wonder, which is all about creating community and elevating women together. And so today I am excited to be part of Stigma-Free Society. And we have a wonderful person that we're interviewing. Her name is Erika Cedillo, and I would love to welcome Erika right now. Hi, Erika.
Hello, Nisha. Thank you for having me. Very excited to be with you.
Great. We are so excited to have you. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Erika, everyone. Erika joined Inclusion BC as a community inclusion advocate. And now she's a director of public policy and programs, and she's been a strong, effective advocate and support for families in her community. And she brings like collaborative and solution-based approach to the work that she does, which is super important. And I think it's super effective. And then before joining Inclusion BC, she worked for 8 years for a major collaborative research initiative project, Asia Pacific Dispute Resolution, at the Peter A. Allard School of Law. So Erika has, now I want you all to listen because this is very impressive, has her Ph.D. in law from the Peter A. Allard School of Law at the University of British Columbia, a master's degree in administration, finance, and corporate law from Universidad Humanitas, Mexico, and obtained her law degree from Tecnológico de Monterrey in Mexico. So pretty cool. I love well-educated women. It just makes me so excited. And then also as a researcher, Erika has developed a specific interest in advancing equitable access to education for children with diverse needs in the public education system. So, Erika, amazing. Excellent. So, Erika, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and like, how did you kind of like end up where you are today? Maybe tell us a bit about your path.
Thank you so much, Nisha. Well, I want to recognize my pronouns are she and hers, and I want to acknowledge that I am joining today from the traditional unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, where I call home in what is now Vancouver. So I'm very excited to be here. Thank you so much. Nisha, you have said that I'm the Director of Public Policy and Programs at Inclusion BC, and it has been quite a journey. And I got to say that I think that there are professional reasons and personal reasons that connect us to the things that we do. And in this case, my personal reasons influenced and shifted my professional trajectory to make both connect. So the major reason that has connected me to the work that I'm doing is like my daughter, whose needs have raised me to the challenge, made me rise to the challenge of advocating for her needs and her full inclusion in community. So our personal journey transformed this professional trajectory that I was in. So after I finished my PhD at UBC, I received the opportunity to join Inclusion BC as a community inclusion advocate, supporting people with developmental disabilities and their families, working one-on-one with them and getting involved in a lot of projects. And since May of this year, I'm in this position as the Director of Public Policy and Programs. So now what I feel very fortunate is that I put my skills and my gifts to work in something that has a higher meaning, like personally and professionally. So that's a bit of me.
That's amazing. I think that higher meaning just changes our lives. And when we care about what we're doing, then there's more impact where we can change others' lives. Because like you and I were chatting earlier, you have to really care about what you do to give it all you've got. It takes energy. And it's amazing that you're doing all of that. And so maybe you could tell us a bit more about Inclusion BC. Like, what is Inclusion BC? What do they stand for? What is it that, and tell us a bit about your role there as well.
Sure. So Inclusion BC, we are a federation and we work with multiple partners in the community and in the government to build community and enhance the lives of children, youth, and adults with intellectual disabilities and their families. And we do that by building awareness and inspiring action, because we want people to act on that, and advancing the rights and responsibilities and social justice. So all in all, it's a social justice movement. And the vision that we have is a world where everyone belongs. And by that, we really mean all. For us, all means all. And he emphasizes like, no, there's no buts, no if, it's everyone belongs, right? And the way we do this is we provide support, like direct support to families. We offer education opportunities for people and the general public and people in our sector, and advocacy when and where it's needed. And we support people across the lifespan, from little children to adults and seniors. So we talk about all sorts of topics of life. In my role as Director of Public Policy and Programs, I am in charge of the Community Inclusion Advocacy Program, which is our helpline, in which I have a fantastic team of advocates who are very knowledgeable, and we are supporting directly the families of people with developmental disabilities and self-advocates directly to advocate for the services and supports that they need. So we journey along them to support them and get those access. And in terms of policy, the main topics that I work on are related to children and youth, and that includes the early years, early intervention therapies, inclusive childcare, inclusive education, supports that children are eligible to receive through the Ministry of Children and Family, and children who receive nursing support services. So those are some of the main topics around policy that are within my role.
Wow, amazing. So it's like a whole array of different areas that you focus on, but it's helping families. It's helping families with getting the support they need and making sure that policies are also like up to date.
Exactly. We want people to be able to access the services and supports that they need. So a lot of what we do is informing people of their rights and their children's rights, because we support their families, but also directly self-advocates who want to understand what type of things they are eligible to receive, what they can access, and if they are not getting them, how they can access them.
So is it that people often aren't aware of the things that are available? Like it must be a complicated system, or is it that people aren't sure, like, oh, that I can get this kind of support? What happens?
Well, I would say a little bit of both. The big challenge, I gotta say, systems are really complex, and a family who's raising a child with a disability, you learn from very early on that, oh my goodness, there are so many different systems. You have the system of children and family, you have the health system, then you enter into education, so you have to learn about the education system, and then your child is going to transition into adult services. There's a whole array of services in the adult world, so everything is separate and everything works in silos. So you need even to learn different languages, how you talk within the health system for what you need, and how you talk within the education system to access the education that your child needs. So a lot of what we do, and that's why usually our work starts with families very young, and sadly some of the first encounters we have is like, things were going well, we were having the therapies, and then we started a school and the supports disappeared, and my child is just half day at the school or just 2 hours at the school. And that's when we have to start telling them, well, actually your son or your daughter has a right to be at a school full time with the right supports. Let's start the conversations and make that happen.
Okay, right. So sometimes people might not even know that they have access to these things and that they could have the full support. So that's like a right.
Yes. And many times it's this assumption that schools think that parents know, and you will be very surprised how they're like, oh, I thought you knew. And it's like, well, no. And then when they find the informed parents, it's like, oh, what's going on here? Right. So we get into quite difficult conversations, but what we always bring to the table is how we're going to collaborate to ensure that this child that we have here is receiving the education that they need, or that these adults in their, and these go through all the stages of life. And when they get to adulthood, it's about like, okay, this person who is turning into an adult, how they're going to have the supports they need to live in society, to have the access to employment, to recreational opportunities that fit the needs that they have. So it's every stage of life has its new challenges, and we still have a lot of work to do to make our society more inclusive.
And so what does inclusion mean to you? Maybe we can talk a bit about that.
Well, inclusion it's an attitude and an approach. And through that, you embrace diversity and the difference among, and promotes equality, right? Equal opportunities for everyone. And that is always a trick, right? Equal access to equal opportunities and equitable access. So those are words that oftentimes come together and can be kind of sometimes confused in certain language. But something that I think lies at the center of inclusion is the fact that a person feel like they belong. And if we're promoting that belonging, we are all wired for connection. Like there's so many researchers and professionals who have talked about this part, like we are wired for connection. A person with a disability has the same desire to connect and belong. So that is what inclusion means to me, like that a person really feels that they belong in their circle, in their community, and they have a network of support. And that comes with changing the attitudes and approach in certain areas in our society.
Oh, I think that's just so beautiful, because it's such a true statement, you know, that really every human just wants to be part of something, just want to belong, just want to be accepted. It really just comes down to acceptance is love, right? And that if we embrace each other, that's community, and everyone wants to be part of a community. And so you're helping that.
Yes, and that's what we want. And that's what we want to more areas in the society and people to see, is that when you're planning the life of a person with a disability and supporting them to plan their life, because that's the main thing. They need to be at the driver's seat, right? What they want for their life and how we rally to make that vision possible. And that is no different from any other child that you will have. You want the same for any one of your children, right? To have a vision, their passions, their interests, how you nurture them. And in the case of a person with a disability, what are the additional accommodations and supports that they need? And that those are the right to have. So we need to embrace that as well, that we're not doing it just only out of the goodwill of our hearts. It's a right that they have to have all those access and supports.
Yes, access and support is important. And I feel that we've come a long way. But how do you feel about where we are at right now? Is there like a long way to go? Do you feel like things are in a positive place with inclusion and access?
Well, I think we have to acknowledge we have come a long way, for sure. And in thinking back about our interview, I always go back to history, right? Where we were and where we're now. And if we go back to the 1950s, like parents were deciding like, this is not right. My child has the right to be in the school with her peers, her neighbors, their siblings, simply, right? Yeah. So parents decided this is not right. So that's how the movement for community inclusion started. So if we see there was a major movement to close down institutions, to support people, families to live in the community. And in that, we've gone, years and years have passed, and then we created stronger legal frameworks, like Canada, for example, ratified the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Peoples with Disabilities in 2010. And we accessed the protocol in 2018. So their optional protocol of that convention, which is meant to make it stronger in the country where it's accepted. So it is a really big steps that we've taken, and still we have a long way to go. I'm being reminded every day when I receive a call in the advocacy line and we hear just a very recent thing, like, oh, I need to use transit, but I cannot wear a mask. How can I transmit to a person that I cannot wear a mask because they are mandatory? So we are facing all those accesses, and COVID has raised so many underlying issues that were already happening for families and people with disabilities, right? So we still have a long way to go, but I don't want to dismiss the great strides that we've made. Just the fact that it is a right for every child to be at their school with the right supports, that says a lot.
Did you find that in this transition that we've had in this, pandemic world now, that like that example you just gave, are there more challenges now like that because of, changes in how people, what people expect or what they are embracing or?
Oh, well, we unfortunately, I got to say that many of the problems that surface for families and people with disabilities during COVID time, there have been no new challenges, but all of them have become harder. So we add the challenges that you already had to access services and supports. And on top of that, a pandemic that limited the opportunities to be outside, with the challenges with accessing the labor force, people who were kind of just, who lost their jobs, or families who are struggling to support their family member because they lost their job. So to the already heavy layer that they had, the pandemic was added to them. So a lot of families have been in quite a crisis mode. I gotta be honest, Nisha.
Yeah, I could imagine that's actually very overwhelming. I'm sure it was overwhelming for everyone, but then also when you add this on top of it, it's great to know that Inclusion BC is there for families. And so if people are watching, Inclusion BC is here for you. They're here to support you. So definitely contact them if you have questions or you have needs, Maybe we could talk a bit about how Inclusion BC encourages full inclusion and self-determination of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities.
Well, some of the ways that we do this at multiple levels and from different points. So one of them is in the individual advocacy. One situation at a time, we're supporting people to advocate for that full inclusion, be it at a daycare, at the school, at the workplace, at recreational opportunities. So that is one. Then we have our campaigns. And with these campaigns, we choose specific topics that we want to raise awareness, that we know are problematic or where we think that more work needs to be done, and inform the public to raise more allies that will support us in the work that we're doing. And one of them is, for example, Everyone Belongs in Our School. That is our campaign for inclusive education. So we continuously share information and resources. We have other campaigns. For example, there was one very important that after the calls that we got in the advocacy line, we developed this work Stop Hurting Kids 1 and 2, which is research and survey and report on restraint and seclusion used in the schools. So through our campaigns, that's how we're advocating for the full inclusion. And then we have the systemic work that we do. So we advocate for policy changes that will help to uphold that vision of full inclusion and self-determination in all aspects of life. So in a school, employment, housing, healthcare, those are really important. And self-determination, it's at the core of our values, because what we want is that we want everyone that we need to focus on the person, be it a child or an adult, but listening to them and upholding their rights to make their own choices and support them to make them, and being allies and supporters of multiple self-advocate groups that we are so fortunate to be connected with, like the self-advocates of Semiamo, BC People's First, the Self-Advocates Leadership Network. So we support them in the way that they want us to support, to elevate their voice and all the work that they're doing, which is really amazing. And that's how we want to be an example and show how supporting self-determination could be done in the way that self-advocates want us to support them.
Love it. I think that self-determination is something that, all parents should be aware of and think about, because kids, if we can encourage kids, to share what they need, all kids, whatever they want, that brings happiness to their life. Like we can help create that for everyone.
Exactly. And people with disabilities have been very clear. I think that's why the main reason of this phrase that they use and that they advocate so strongly for it, that said, nothing about us without us. So we all
Ooh,
together have a responsibility to uphold this and not just think that we know better for them. No,
yes.
we listen to them, and then we support in the best way possible with our knowledge, with our skills, to supporting them in their lives.
That's a great quote, and it's a great thing to keep in mind, right? That it's beautiful. So today is actually International Day of Persons with Disabilities. So we're really happy to have you talking here with us today because it makes it even more meaningful. So what resources and programs does Inclusion BC offer to help those with disabilities?
Well, as I was saying, we have our advocacy line, but in terms of celebration and spreading the word and the knowledge, we have our annual conference that we hold, and we bring together close to 500 delegates from people with disabilities, their families, people who support them, to learn together. And of course, COVID changed things for all of us. So
Yeah.
our conference has been postponed, but through this time, we're holding our virtual learning series. And actually today, the session today is from Self Advocates of Semiahmoo, and they are talking about a great project that they have that is called the Successful Project. So I really invite people to check out what they are doing in the work. What they want is basically share more with the society how they feel better supported, and to break down the stigmas and all conceptions about people with disabilities, and to see them as leaders in their areas of life. So yeah, it's really interesting work. And today also we have this day triggers a lot of conversation, which is really exciting, and it's been a busy day since the morning.
I
So
bet.
yes, so we take the opportunity also to make engagements with government and different groups or community partners to elevate the issues that are important to people with disabilities and their families. So this day also, it's always a good trigger to promote those conversations.
Amazing. And we're just so happy to have you having this conversation with us today as well. Thank you. I know it's a busy day for you. So maybe, Erika, we can talk a bit about rights-based, person-centered approach. Now, I know you talked about person-centered and then the rights-based. Maybe you can kind of like touch a bit about that and how that is like part of Inclusion BC.
Absolutely. And that is a topic that I love, of course. So a rights-based approach is grounded really on the recognition that people with disabilities have the same rights, human and civil rights, like any other person in the society, and they should be given the same opportunities to exercise those rights. Many times, people with disabilities are not allowed to exercise their rights in the same way as others, because I gotta say, because of ableist perspectives, right? So if a person communicates in a way that is very different from others, some people assume that their decision is not valid. Well, in reality, they're just expressing their vision and their decision in a way that is different from what we're used to. So we need to break down those ableist lenses that many times get in the way. And so a rights-based approach frames all these conversations from that way of seeing their rights, and that they have the right to exercise, to access community like housing, education, healthcare, and that they need accommodations and supports. And the other part that is really interesting, or that I keep at the center of my heart as well, is a person-centered. And it is connected, but this a specific way of listening to the person. I was referring it a little bit before in terms of saying, like, what is that you want? So it's listen, respect, and uphold the interest of the person, and let them guide their lives, be on the driver's seat. So we don't decide, oh, I think this job is the best job for you because of these and these reasons. You ask them, what are your passions? What are your interests? What kind of jobs you want to explore in that area? How can we make that happen? That is a person-centered approach. We come from the center, we come around, wrap around, and decide these are the supports and services that are needed.
It's great. It's a great way to keep people aware of, biases they may have or ways of thinking that they think, oh, well, I just know what to do here. No, always include the person and see what it is that they want, what they need. And then that creates happiness.
Exactly. And that's what we want, right? Like we have come to this world to be happy, and how we support each other for that.
Yes, exactly. So one of the cool campaigns you guys do is on inclusive education. So why is inclusive education important? You can tell us a bit about it. Like obviously we know it is important, but why is it so important and how do we encourage it?
Oh, this is, as you introduced me, this is a topic that is very key to my heart. But I gotta say, and I've been learning more as well since I joined Inclusion BC, in how inclusive education was the origin of the whole movement of community inclusion, right? So parents said, like, no, my child should go to the same school as their siblings.
Yeah.
So if we think about what is public education, like education is considered the great equalizer, right? Everyone has the same access, and is where we learn about the world, about others, and how we're going to connect with each other. So it's important that our schools reflect that diversity that we see in the community, in our society. So right now we see that children are learning and are immersed in more inclusive environments. And the more we have this, the more they will be adults that when they reach their workplaces, their community places, they're going to say, like, wait a minute, some people are missing here, because I remember my classmate, my friend, so and so, and they are going to be aware. So that is good. And I think that is the important key of inclusive education, right? Like we come together as a community and we show all of our children to be kind to each other, to recognize and to see each other, like really see each other. Because in the past, like children with, and it still sadly still happens, but sometimes, oftentimes, like children are in their special programs in a separate room, in a separate area of the school. And that continues that idea of them and us, when in reality it's all together. And that's what we want to achieve. How we keep moving forward to that. And how we encourage inclusive education, I would say, first of all, recognize it as a right. We need to see it like that. And it's like, this is not just a kind gesture or just because of the willness of our heart. This is the right thing to do, right? It is the right to be there. And the way that I would really encourage people is just talk about diversity with your children, have frequent conversations with your children, with your peers, with your friends. The more we talk, the more we feel comfortable on addressing. Sometimes I still see people like, oh, not sure how to say, what to say. They don't want to sound or say something inappropriate, so they avoid. And with that, they hurt others, right? And you're excluding them by that, in doing it that way. So I gotta say, children books are one of the great ways to all learn together, not only children, but also adults, because it breaks it down into small chunks, right? And something big concepts into some really digestible ideas that everyone can relate to, and say, like, well, we're all different, and that is a good thing, right? And the more we talk about it, I think is the best way to go about it.
And I love that you've kind of touched on that, like advice basically for, parents or educators or school counselors, of like, reading books that help people like connect, and also just talking about it, like not ignoring it or pretending like there's something that, oh, we're just not going to talk about that. No, but just having the conversations, because kids are open. Kids are open to everyone. Kids just, they're accepting, they have love. It's through society that we start to create these, guards against things. But any other suggestions that you might have for, like, counselors, teachers, parents, educators that are going to help make like an inclusive home and school environment?
Well, I want to say, keep doing big work on making your classroom more inclusive. There are a lot of amazing researchers and educators out there, like Shelley Moore, Leighton Schneller, Jennifer Katz, so many names that I could not be able to name them all right now. But they are doing great work and research on how to make inclusive education a reality in all our schools in BC. Follow their work, and I learn from them, right? I've been hearing more and more, and we've seen it. The use of universal design for learning, for example, is one of the very specific ways that makes classrooms more inclusive, and also emphasizing the importance of collaboration. I also hear that we cannot think that one teacher can do it all on their own. They need supports, resources, connecting with other teachers. So they need also to have the right supports to make that available for all the children. And one of the things that I really like to always bring it up is good communication and collaboration. I think everyone involved in a student life, like the parents, all the specialists, the educators, administrators, support staff, everyone needs to see each other as partners, and parents need to be seen as partners in this. And through good collaboration and communication, I've seen great things happening, because there's good frameworks that tell us we need to make things more supportive, more inclusive. Now it's about making the hard work and those sometimes difficult conversations and how to make it happen. So, but bit by bit, I think all of this is going to contribute to change the attitudes, which is the biggest barrier that we often see, right?
Oh, well, Erika, I just love that you are bringing this to us today and talking about such important topics of, openness, inclusion, and also being aware that it is a right to be part of, the school system and part of the education system. And if we can keep that in mind and have the conversations, then we're on the right path. So thank you for joining us today from Inclusion BC, and wishing you all the best with all I'm sure you have a lot going on in the rest of your day.
I do. Thank you so much, Nisha. I really enjoy our conversation. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And everyone who's watching, if you need to have some conversations, if you are looking for support, contact Inclusion BC, because they might have some information for you or guidance or support. And so just know that you're not alone. That's why we do the Stigma-Free. We don't want anyone to feel like they're alone. We want people to have conversations and everything to just be, talked about and shared, and know that you have people in your corner cheering you on.
Exactly. That's what we want them to know. Thank you, Nisha.
Thank you. Have an amazing day. Take care, everyone. See you next Thursday at 11 a.m. Stigma-Free Society Wellness Chats with Nisha. Bye now.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.